grand hall of the Celestial Spire Palace shimmered beneath twin moons that peered through crystal dome skylights, their silver light dancing across walls of living marble, stone that pulsed gently, as if breathing with the heart of the planet below. Torches of solidified plasma flickered without heat, casting long shadows that curled like smoke around towering pillars carved with the histories of 1,000 conquered stars. At the center of it all stood Corwin Vale, a human soldier from the 3rd Terran Expeditionary Force, boots scuffed with desert grit, uniform torn at the shoulder and hands trembling, not from fear of death, but from the impossible weight of standing before her. Queen Lysara Vey of the Azure Dominion sat upon the Moonstone throne, her blue skin the deep hue of twilight oceans, flawless and luminous under the hall's glow. Her hair, long and white as frozen starlight, cascaded over the shoulders of a gown woven from nebulous silk, fabric that shifted colors with her mood, now shimmering faint violet, betraying something softer than regal command. Her eyes, large and almond-shaped, glowed faintly gold, holding galaxies within their depths. She had summoned him, not as a prisoner, not as a spy, but as the one who had carried her wounded daughter through the scorched dunes of Xeris during the last skirmish with the Iron Hive. No Terran had ever done such a thing and lived to tell of it. Most would have left the princess to die rather than risk touching alien flesh. But Corwin hadn't hesitated. Now, standing before her in the echoing silence of the throne room, guards with plasma lances standing statue-still at every archway, Corwin's breath came shallow. His fingers twitched at his sides, betraying the calm he tried to wear like armor. He'd faced plasma storms, hive drones with serrated mandibles, and the howling vacuum of orbital drops, but never this. Never a queen whose very presence made the air hum like a harp string plucked by gods. His hands shook as he lifted them, half in salute, half in surrender, and that's when she rose. She moved without sound, bare feet gliding over the floor as if gravity itself bowed to her grace. Before he could stammer an apology or a plea, she was before him, close enough that he caught the scent of moon blossom and ozone clinging to her. Then, with a tenderness that unraveled every nerve in his body, she took his rough, calloused hands in her own, cool, smooth, faintly luminescent. "Don't be afraid, human," she whispered, her voice like wind through crystalline chimes, low and warm and impossibly kind. Corwin blinked. He'd expected interrogation, execution even, not this. Not gentleness from a ruler whose fleet had shattered 3 Terran armadas in a single orbit. His mouth opened, but no words came. He remembered the desert, the way Princess Nyra had clutched his back, bleeding from a hive stinger embedded in her side, whispering prayers in a language that sounded like rain on glass. He'd ripped the thing out with his bare hands, ignoring the acid that burned his knuckles. He'd carried her for 12 miles under a double sun, singing old Earth sea shanties to keep her awake, because he didn't know any lullabies from her world. And now her mother held his blistered, trembling hands like they were sacred. Lysara smiled, just slightly, a flicker of amusement softening the regal lines of her face. "You think I am here to punish you?" she asked, tilting her head. "Or perhaps you believe I will have you dissected to learn why a Terran would risk his life for my child?" Her thumb brushed over a scar on his knuckle, and Corwin nearly flinched. "No, I am here to thank you, and to ask something more." Before he could process that, a shrill alarm blared through the palace, a deep, resonant tone that vibrated in the bones. The guards snapped to attention, their plasma lances humming to life. Lysara's eyes flared gold, her expression shifting from warmth to steel in an instant. "The hive," she said, voice sharp now. "They've breached the outer shield." Corwin didn't hesitate. "Where's Nyra?" "In the sunken garden. She's still healing." Lysara's voice cracked, just once before hardening again. "They're targeting her. They know she carries the Azure bloodline. If they take her alive, they'll use her genetic key to unlock the celestial core, the heart of our world." Without thinking, Corwin dropped into a combat stance, scanning the room for weapons. One of the guards tossed him a short plasma blade, its hilt warm, humming with restrained power. "I won't let them have her," he said, voice low but firm. Lysara studied him, her expression unreadable. Then, to his shock, she unclasped the sapphire pendant at her throat, a relic older than human civilization, and pressed it into his palm. "This will shield you from their neural disruptors, and it will let you pass the core's defenses if it comes to that." Her golden eyes locked onto his. "If I fall, take Nyra to the core chamber. Activate the seed protocol. It will preserve her consciousness, at least, until the war is over. Corwin stared at the pendant, then back at her. You're trusting me with your daughter's soul? You already proved you would die for her, she said simply. That is the rarest kind of trust. What followed was chaos wrapped in precision. Hive drones, chitinous horrors with too many limbs and eyes that glowed like dying stars, swarmed through the western atrium, their acidic claws melting through palace walls. Corwin moved like fire, plasma blades singing as it cleaved through exoskeletons. He wasn't the strongest, nor the fastest, but he was clever, using chandeliers as pendulums, redirecting plasma fire off reflective surfaces, even throwing ornamental vases filled with liquid starlight that exploded in blinding bursts. Behind him, Lysara fought like a storm given form, her hands weaving arcs of blue energy that disintegrated drones with a thought. Yet for every one they fell, 3 more crawled through the breaches. They found Naira in the sunken garden, surrounded by shattered moon lilies, her white hair stained with blood, eyes wide with terror. But when she saw Corwin, she let out a choked cry of relief and stumbled toward him. He caught her before she fell, her small frame trembling against his chest. You came back, she whispered. Always, he said, tightening his grip. Lysara joined them moments later, her gown torn at the hem, one arm bleeding from a gash that wept silver light. Alien blood, Corwin realized with a jolt. She pressed a hand to her daughter's cheek, then to Corwin's shoulder. The core chamber. Now. They ran through collapsing corridors, leaping over molten floor panels, dodging falling debris. Hive scouts pursued them, screeching in that awful metallic language. At one point, Corwin shoved Naira behind a pillar and turned to face 3 drones head-on. He was outmatched, exhausted, bleeding from a dozen cuts, but he held his ground, blade raised. Just as the lead drone lunged, a pulse of blue energy incinerated it from behind. Lysara stood there, panting, her face pale but resolute. You're surprisingly hard to kill, human, she said, a ghost of a smile touching her lips. Occupational hazard, he grunted, helping her up. They reached the core chamber, a vast, spherical room at the planet's very center, walls lined with pulsing veins of light. In the middle floated a sphere of pure energy, humming with the song of creation itself. Naira stepped forward, tears streaming down her cheeks. Mother, if I go in, I won't come back. Not as I am. Lysara knelt before her, cupping her daughter's face. You will be safe, and when the Hive are defeated, we will find a way to restore you. I promise. Then she turned to Corwin. You must stay with her. The core responds to emotional resonance. It needs someone who cares for her. Not out of duty, but out of love. Corwin's breath caught. He looked at Naira, her wide, frightened eyes, the way she clung to his sleeve like he was the only solid thing in a collapsing world. He thought of the desert, her weak laughter as he sang off-key, the way she'd called him son brother in her sleep. He nodded. I'll stay. Lysara placed her hand over his heart, then over Naira's. Then let your bond be her anchor. As Naira stepped into the light, vanishing into the core with a final, tearful glance, Lysara turned to face the chamber doors, which groaned under the weight of Hive assault. Now, she said, drawing a long blade of solidified starlight from her back. We hold the line. Corwin stood beside her, plasma blade humming once more. You know they'll break through. Yes, she said, her voice calm, but not before dawn. And by then, the seed will have taken root. The Hive cannot unmake what the core has claimed. They fought side by side for what felt like hours, human and alien queen, back to back, breathing the same scorched air, bleeding the same resolve. Corwin learned her tells. The way her energy flared when she was about to unleash a devastating blast, the slight hitch in her breath when she was hurt. She, in turn, learned his rhythms, how he feinted left before striking right, how he saved his last burst of energy for when allies were in danger. They didn't speak. They didn't need to. When the final drone fell, the chamber lay in ruins. Corwin collapsed against a wall, gasping. Lysara knelt beside him, her luminescence dimmed, her wounds glowing faintly. She pressed a hand to his forehead, and a soothing coolness spread through him, easing the pain. You fought like one of my own, she murmured. Guess I'm adopted, he joked weakly. To his surprise, she laughed. A soft, melodic sound that filled the ruined chamber like rain after drought. Perhaps more than you know. Days passed. The Hive retreated, their assault repelled, for now. The palace was rebuilt, faster than human eyes could follow. Biostone growing like vines, sealing wounds in the architecture. Naira remained within the core, her presence a faint hum in the air, a warmth in the light. Corwin was given quarters not as a guest, but as a member of the royal household. Servants bowed not out of fear, but respect. Children in the courtyards waved shyly, calling him son brother. Lasara visited him often, sometimes to discuss strategy, sometimes to simply sit in silence beneath the twin moons, sipping tea brewed from stardew petals. One evening, as they walked through the healing glade, where wounded warriors from both human and alien forces recovered together, she stopped beneath a canopy of singing trees. "You never asked why I brought you here," she said, voice quiet. Corwin shrugged. "Figured you'd tell me when you were ready." She turned to him, golden eyes searching his. "When I saw you carrying Naira through the desert, I saw something I thought lost. Compassion without expectation. Courage without glory. You didn't know she was a princess. You didn't care. You saw someone in pain, and you acted." He looked away, suddenly shy. "Anyone would have done the same." "No," she said firmly. "Not anyone. Not in this war. Not after everything." She reached for his hand again, this time without hesitation from him. "The Dominion has many generals, many warriors, but few hearts like yours, and I have ruled alone for too long." Corwin's pulse quickened. "What are you saying?" Lasara smiled, soft and radiant. "I am saying that if you are willing, the position of royal consort is open. Not out of politics, not out of debt, but because I would like to walk beneath these moons with someone who sees me, not just my crown." Corwin stared at her, stunned. A human, a mere soldier, asked to marry an alien queen? It sounded like the plot of a bad holodrama. And yet, looking into her eyes, seeing the vulnerability beneath the regality, he didn't laugh. He squeezed her hand. "Only if Naira's okay with it, and if I get to keep my boots." Lasara laughed again, the sound bright and true. "She already calls you father in her dreams. And your boots may stay, as long as you promise to wear proper slippers at formal dinners." He grinned. "Deal." But the war wasn't over. The hive still lurked in the outer systems, regrouping, evolving. And though peace bloomed in the palace gardens, whispers reached the throne of a new threat. A faction of Terran hardliners who saw the alliance as betrayal, who plotted to strike from within. Corwin knew his fight wasn't finished. But now he had more than duty. He had a family, a home, a queen who held his shaking hands and told him not to be afraid. And as the twin moons rose once more over the celestial spire, painting the palace in silver and blue, Corwin Vale, soldier, protector, soon-to-be consort, stood beside Lasara, watching the stars, ready for whatever came next. Weeks melted into a fragile peace. The palace hummed with quiet industry. Alien artisans wove tapestries depicting Corwin's desert rescue beside ancient dynastic scenes. Human engineers collaborated with Dominion biotech weavers to reinforce the planetary shields. And in the sunken garden, now restored with twice the moon lilies, Naira's presence lingered like a warm breeze, her voice occasionally whispering through the core's resonance field, asking about Earth's oceans or humming along to Corwin's off-key renditions of old lullabies. Corwin adjusted to court life with clumsy grace. He learned to bow without tripping, to sip moonblossom tea without scalding his tongue, and, most challengingly, to wear the ceremonial sash of the royal consort-in-waiting, which kept slipping off his shoulders during audiences. The courtiers, once skeptical of the mud-born human, now watched him with reluctant admiration, especially after he disarmed a drunken ambassador from the Crimson Clans using nothing but a fruit platter and a well-timed quip. Even Lasara had laughed so hard she snorted, a sound no one in the palace had ever heard, and which she immediately denied ever making. But beneath the surface, tension coiled like a sleeping serpent. It began with the food. One morning, Corwin woke with a burning in his throat and a fever that spiked so fast the palace medics were summoned before dawn. His skin flushed red, his veins pulsed with unnatural heat, and for 3 terrifying days, he drifted between delirium and darkness. Lasara never left his side. She sang old Dominion hymns, pressed cooling crystals to his brow, and once, when he whispered Naira's name in his sleep, she placed her palm over his chest and channeled a sliver of the core's energy into him, risking her own stability to anchor his fading life force. When he finally woke, weak but clear-eyed, she was asleep in a chair beside him, her white hair spilling over the armrest like spilled milk. He reached out, brushing a strand from her cheek. She stirred instantly, eyes flashing gold with alertness. "You're alive," she breathed. "Barely," he croaked. What happened? Her expression hardened. Poison. Subtle. Not lethal to our kind, but deadly to Terrans. It was in the spiced nectar you drank at last night's banquet. Corwin frowned. Who would? Before she could answer, a palace guard burst in, face pale. Your Majesty, the Terran envoy ship. It's gone. Lasara stood in one fluid motion. Gone. Vanished from orbit. No distress call. No trace. But we intercepted a coded transmission moments before. It mentioned Project Clean Slate and your name, Consort Corwin. Ice flooded Corwin's veins. Project Clean Slate. He'd heard whispers of it back on Earth. A Black Ops initiative designed to eliminate any human entangled with alien powers, deemed a genetic contamination risk. He'd assumed it was rumor. Now it was real, and they'd come for him. They think I've been compromised, he said quietly. Or worse, that I'm helping you weaponize human DNA. Lasara's eyes blazed. Then they are fools, but dangerous ones. That night, under cover of a solar eclipse that darkened the twin moons, Corwin met with a shadowy figure in the obsidian courtyard. A human, wrapped in a thermal cloak, face obscured. It was Major Viral, a former comrade from the 3rd Expeditionary Force, now deep undercover. Corwin, Viral hissed, voice tight with urgency. You've got to get out. Clean Slate isn't just a team. It's sanctioned at the highest levels. They've embedded agents in the palace. They plan to detonate an antimatter charge in the core chamber during the Unity ceremony next week. They think destroying the core will cripple the Dominion and purify the Alliance. Corwin's blood ran cold. The Unity ceremony, the day he and Lasara were to formally pledge their bond before the Galactic Courts. The same day Naira was scheduled to attempt reintegration from the core. They'll kill thousands, Corwin whispered. And frame you for it, Viral added grimly. They've already planted evidence, fake logs, voice mimics. After the blast, they'll broadcast that you betrayed the Dominion to save humanity. War will restart, and Earth will be the hero. Corwin clenched his fists. I won't let that happen. You can't stop it alone, Viral said. But if you create a diversion, I can access the central vault and disable the charge. Corwin hesitated. Trusting Viral was a gamble, but not trusting him meant certain doom. He returned to Lasara's chamber and told her everything, omitting Viral's name, but revealing the plot. To his surprise, she didn't rage. She grew still, her luminescence dimming to a deep indigo, the color of sorrow and resolve. So, she said softly, even your own kind would burn the bridge you built. They don't see the bridge, Corwin said. They only see the fire. She took his hands again, stronger this time, steadier. Then we will show them the other side. The Unity ceremony arrived beneath skies swollen with storm clouds, an omen the court astrologers ignored. Thousands gathered in the grand atrium. Ambassadors, warriors, scholars from 100 species. Naira's form shimmered faintly in the center, a translucent figure woven from light, her eyes locked on Corwin with quiet hope. But as the High Priestess began the rite of binding, alarms erupted, not from the hive, but from within. Saboteurs, humans in Dominion uniforms, sprang from the crowd, plasma charges clamped to their belts. Chaos erupted. Blaster fire lit the air. Corwin tackled Lasara behind the Moonstone throne just as an explosion rocked the eastern wing. Viral, Corwin shouted over the din. Gone, Lasara said, her voice sharp. He never came. The vault access logs show no breach. Corwin's stomach dropped. He'd been played. But then, a new voice crackled over the palace comms, calm and eerily familiar. Corwin Vale, you always were too trusting. On the central holoscreen, the face of Admiral Kress, a man Corwin had saluted 100 times, appeared, smirking. Behind him floated the stolen Terran envoy ship, now retrofitted with Dominion tech. You see, Kress said, we didn't need to plant a bomb. We just needed you to lead us to the core's harmonic frequency. And you did. Every time you spoke to Naira through the resonance field, our probes recorded the signature. Now we sync our warhead to that frequency. One pulse, and the core unravels from within. Lasara's face went ashen. He's right. The core is vulnerable during reintegration. Corwin's mind raced. We have minutes. Then Naira's voice, clear, strong, echoed through the chamber, not from the core, but from the palace AI itself. Mother, Corwin, I can stop him. Before they could react, Naira's light form dissolved, and the core's hum shifted pitch. The entire palace groaned as ancient systems awakened. Vines of biocircuitry erupted from the walls, wrapping around the saboteurs, disarming them with paralyzing pulses. The ceiling retracted, revealing the storm-racked sky and the approaching Terran warship. I've merged with the palace's neural matrix. Naira's voice rang out, now speaking through every speaker, every light panel. I am the core, and I am home. Lasara stared, tears glistening in her golden eyes. My daughter. But Cress wasn't done. Cute trick, alien child. But your matrix can't stop this. A beam of antimatter energy lanced from the warship, aimed not at the palace, but at the planet's magnetic poles. The sky split open. Corwin knew instantly what Cress intended. Destabilize the magnetosphere, fry every living circuit on the planet, including Naira. Without thinking, he sprinted to the royal armory, grabbed the Starfall lance, a relic weapon said to channel solar flares, and raced to the highest spire. Rain lashed his face as he raised the lance toward the sky. He had no training, no right, but he had love. He screamed Naira's name and plunged the lance into the spire's energy conduit. Light exploded. Not destruction, but redirection. Naira, fused with the core, seized the antimatter beam and bent it through Corwin's conduit, channeling it harmlessly into the upper atmosphere, where it ignited a aurora so vast it could be seen from orbit, a curtain of purple and gold that shimmered like a promise. On the holoscreen, Cress's face twisted in disbelief. Impossible! Then, from behind him on the warship, weapons fire erupted. Viral, alive, bleeding but standing, had taken the bridge. Not impossible, Admiral, he growled. Just human. The warship surrendered within the hour. In the aftermath, silence fell. Not of emptiness, but of awe. Corwin stood on the balcony, wrapped in a dry cloak Lasara had draped over his shoulders. Below, the aurora faded, leaving stars sharp and bright. She's back, Lasara said softly. Corwin turned. Naira stood in the doorway, solid whole, her white hair gleaming, her blue skin flawless. She ran to him and threw her arms around his waist, burying her face in his chest. You didn't leave, she whispered. Never, he said, holding her tight. Lasara approached, her eyes shimmering with pride and something deeper. Love, unguarded. The unity ceremony was interrupted, she said, a playful lilt in her voice. Shall we try again? Properly this time. Corwin grinned. Only if I don't have to wear that sash. You do, she said, but I'll help you pin it. And so, beneath the watchful stars, as the palace healed and the galaxy held its breath, a human soldier, an alien queen, and the daughter who bound them together began their true story. Not of war, but of home. Yet far beyond the rim of known space, in the ruins of a dead hive nest, something stirred. A signal, ancient, alien, and utterly unlike anything the Dominion had ever encountered. Pulsed once, then fell silent. But it had been heard, and it was coming. The signal came not as sound, but as a dream. 3 nights after the unity ceremony, now quietly celebrated in the restored core chamber with only Viral, Naira, and a handful of trusted allies present, Corwin woke gasping, drenched in sweat that shimmered faintly blue. In his dream, he'd stood on a world of black glass beneath a sky choked with crimson clouds. Towers of obsidian spiraled into the void, and at their center, a single eye, vast, lidless, and pulsing with violet fire, had stared straight into his soul. And it had spoken, not in words but in feelings. You are chosen. Prepare. Lasara found him on the balcony, staring into the stars with haunted eyes. She didn't ask. She simply sat beside him, her cool hand resting on his knee. It wasn't the hive, he said at last. It wasn't human. It was older, hungrier. She went still. The Voidborn. Corwin turned. You know it. Her golden eyes dimmed to amber, the color of warning. Legends say they predate the Dominion, the hive, even the core itself. They do not conquer. They consume. Stars, civilizations, time, they unravel reality to feed their hunger. We thought them myth, vanished in the first silence. Naira, who had been reading in the adjacent alcove, looked up, her expression unreadable. The core. It remembers them, she murmured. It's afraid. That same week, strange anomalies began appearing across the galaxy. Entire colonies on the fringe reported their skies turning black for days, their crops withering overnight, their children speaking in tongues no linguist could translate. One mining outpost orbiting a neutron star broadcast a final message before vanishing. It watches through the cracks. Then came the first true attack. Not with ships or soldiers, but with silence. On the desert moon of Tarsus 7, a Dominion listening post went dark. No explosion, no distress call, just absence. When a recovery team arrived, they found the station intact. But every living being inside had been turned to glass. Not burned, not vaporized, transformed. Their faces frozen in expressions of awe, not terror. And etched into the floor, in a language none could read, was a single symbol. An eye within a spiral. Corwin recognized it from his dream. Lasara convened the High Conclave, a gathering of galactic leaders that hadn't met in 3 centuries. Viral represented the reformed Terran Alliance, his rank now elevated to envoy of peace. To everyone's surprise, the Crimson Clans, the Iron Hive's former rivals, sent their matriarch, a scarred warrior with 6 arms and eyes like molten copper, who bowed deeply to Corwin. "You stood with the Azure Queen when all others fled," she rumbled. "We stand with you now." But unity was fragile. Within days, dissent brewed. Some factions argued the Voidborn were a Dominion fabrication, a ploy to seize control. Others whispered that Corwin himself was the catalyst, that his human presence had torn the veil between dimensions. Even among Lasara's own council, voices grew cautious. "Perhaps," said Elder Zoran, his voice like grinding stone, "the consort should be quarantined, for the safety of the realm." Lasara's reply was ice and lightning. "Touch him, and you answer to the core itself." Still, Corwin felt the weight of suspicion. He caught courtiers averting their eyes, heard hushed conversations cease when he entered a room. Even Naira seemed distant, lost in communion with the core, her dreams filled with the same black glass world. One evening, desperate for clarity, he visited the royal archives, a vault deep beneath the palace where forbidden knowledge slept. There, among scrolls written in light and data crystals older than Earth's moon, he found it, the prophecy of the Sundered Bridge. It spoke of a time when the veil frays, and a child of Earth shall stand between silence and song. But the last line chilled him. He shall save the many, or become the hollow through which the eye enters. He wasn't a hero. He was a doorway. That night he packed a satchel. He wouldn't wait to be exiled. He'd leave before the fear turned to violence. But as he reached the palace gates, a small hand tugged his sleeve. Naira stood there, barefoot, wrapped in a starweave shawl, her eyes too old for her face. "You can't run," she said softly. "The dream isn't just in your head. It's in your blood." Corwin knelt. "I don't want to hurt you." "You won't," she said, pressing something into his palm. A seed, glowing faintly turquoise. "The core gave me this. It's a fragment of itself. Plant it where the first silence fell. It will show you the truth." Before he could ask more, Lasara appeared behind them, dressed for travel, a plasma rifle slung over her shoulder. "You didn't think I'd let you go alone, did you?" she said, her voice warm but firm. "But the palace is safer with Naira guarding it," Lasara said, glancing at her daughter. "And I trust her more than I trust any council." Naira hugged them both, then stepped back, her form flickering with inner light. "Find the first silence," she whispered. "And remember, love is the only frequency the void cannot distort." Their ship, a sleek, bioorganic skiff grown from core-tuned coral, leapt into the void. They traveled for 10 days, following the seed's pulse, which grew stronger near gravitational anomalies. They passed dead stars wrapped in black vines, planets frozen mid-explosion, and one system where time flowed backward, showing them their own ship arriving before they'd left. Finally, they arrived at the coordinates. A lone asteroid in the Kumar Belt, scarred by a perfect circle of obsidian. "This is it," Corwin said, boots crunching on the gray dust. "The first recorded disappearance. 300 years ago." At the center of the circle, the seed in his palm flared. He knelt and pressed it into the rock. Light erupted, not outward but inward, folding space like origami. A doorway opened, not of metal or stone, but of pure memory. They stepped through. Inside was not a place, but a moment frozen in time. A Dominion scout ship, centuries old, hovered above the asteroid. And standing on its hull was a figure in blue skin and white hair, Lasara. But younger, much younger. She was speaking to someone off-screen, her face twisted in grief. "I had no choice," she whispered. The core demanded a sacrifice, and I gave it, my firstborn. Corwin's breath caught. Nyra wasn't her only child. The memory shifted. A child small, blue-skinned, with eyes like twin suns, was placed inside a stasis pod, then launched into the asteroid's core. Not to die, to sleep, to become a beacon. The first silence wasn't an attack, Lasara whispered, tears tracing silver paths down her cheeks. It was a ritual. I sealed my son, Kalen, in the heart of this rock to anchor the veil. His life force has held back the Voidborn all this time. Corwin stared at her. You never told Nyra? How could I? Lasara's voice broke. She would have tried to wake him, and if the seal breaks, the eye enters. As if summoned, the ground trembled. The obsidian circle cracked. From the fissure rose a figure. Tall, emaciated, eyes burning violet. Kalen, but not as he was. His skin was cracked like dry earth, his mouth stitched shut with threads of darkness. And behind him, the sky tore open. The eye had found its way in. The prophecy wasn't about you, Corwin, Lasara said, stepping in front of him, hands blazing with energy. It was about him. He's the bridge now. Corwin looked at the seed in his hand. It had sprouted into a tiny flower, its petals humming with Nyra's voice. Love is the only frequency. He understood. He didn't attack. He didn't run. He walked toward Kalen, hands open, empty. I know what it's like to lose a family, Corwin said, voice steady. To feel like you're nothing but a wound in the world. But you're not alone. Nyra is your sister. Lasara never stopped loving you. And you've been holding back the dark for 300 years. Kalen tilted his head. The violet fire in his eyes flickered. Corwin reached out, slowly, gently, and touched the stitched mouth. The threads unraveled. Kalen gasped, a sound like wind through ancient ruins. Then he collapsed into Corwin's arms, sobbing. Above them, the eye shrieked. A sound that cracked stars, and began to recede, denied its vessel. Back on the palace balcony one moonlit evening, weeks later, Corwin watched Kalen and Nyra spar in the courtyard. Laughing, shoving, arguing over which earth dessert was superior, Kalen insisted cake was a myth until Corwin baked him one. Lasara leaned against him, her head on his shoulder. You didn't just save us, she murmured. You gave me back my son. Corwin smiled. Turns out love really is the ultimate weapon. She kissed his temple. And you, Corwin Vale, are the heart of this family. But as the twin moons climbed higher, casting silver paths across the gardens, Corwin felt it again. The faintest tremor in the air, the whisper of something vast moving in the dark between galaxies. The eye was gone, but the void remained, and it was patient. For now, though, there was cake to eat, children to scold, and a queen who still held his hands whenever the nightmares came, reminding him always, don't be afraid, human, because home wasn't a place. It was the people who chose to stand with you, even when the universe tried to pull you apart. Years passed, and the scars of war softened into stories told by firelight. Corwin and Lasara ruled not as queen and consort, but as partners, laughing over burnt cakes, debating star charts, and dancing barefoot in the rain-drenched gardens. Nyra became the core's voice to the young, teaching compassion across species, while Kalen, once a ghost of silence, founded a school for those touched by the void, turning pain into protection. Together, they rebuilt not just a world, but a family. Children with blue skin and human eyes, white hair and Terran grins, chased moonblossom butterflies through palace halls. The twin moons watched over them, steady and kind. Even the stars seemed to shine a little brighter. And whenever Corwin's hands trembled, not from fear, but from joy, Lasara would take them gently in hers and whisper, you belong here. And in that moment, beneath a sky full of peace, he knew he always had.